Media Talks, the podcast that helps to better understand the world of media and video advertising.
Hello and welcome back to all our Media Talk listeners. Happy New Year and best wishes for 2023. For this first episode of the year, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome today Richard Brant, Director of Advanced TV at Vevo. Rich,
Hello, Manu.
welcome and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Yes, it's been a sluggish start, but I'm getting into it.
We'll try to make that. We're going to accelerate today.
Definitely.
So to kick off this first episode of 23, I thought we should talk about advanced TV and CTV in particular. This is still a much discussed topic, and there's a lot going on right now, particularly as we see so many sort of new platforms or apps being created and audience sort of shifting around. So, but before we go into the core of our conversation about advanced TV, Rich, can you just tell us a little more about you and your role at Vevo, and obviously about Vevo?
Yeah, sure. So Richard Brant. So I'm Director of Advanced TV across UK and international. So anything outside of the US. And my role here, well, it started around about a year and a half ago now. I've got a history across both publisher side as well as agency side. So, yeah, like you say, Manu, there is a lot going on, a lot of confusion about how to approach the market from both sides of the fence, to be honest. My role was really to kind of take into account what was happening in the landscape, and as we'll talk about a little bit later, I'd imagine, is that there is a lot of behavioural changes, and as an agnostic distributor of content, we see those changes happening across all these different platforms, and the way that ultimately the viewer decides to watch TV as they frame it. Vevo, we're basically the leading music video network across the globe, 25 billion impressions every month, and spans multiple territories. And we're joint owned by, it's a joint venture effectively by Sony and Universal. So all of their artists and all the sub labels underneath that come with it. And our main purpose is really to maximize distribution and the value of the music video on behalf of those artists, because the artists want to be heard and seen as far and wide as possible, and it's our job effectively to do that for them. So that's it in a nutshell, really.
So you mentioned earlier, but there's a lot of confusion. Advanced TV, CTV, OTT. There's AVOD, BVOD, fast now, HVOD, SAVOD, whatever. I think the industry.
I've heard a few of the new ones as well. Yeah.
I think we get lost and confused. So I'm very much looking forward to our conversation and try and bring some clarity and obviously talk to you about what you guys have been doing. So. Maybe first thing first, a definition, and so we are clear about what we're talking about. So how would you define advanced TV, and what does it mean for you at Vevo?
So advanced TV, really for us, is the TV screen. So however it got onto the TV screen is effectively that's advanced TV. So you can interact with it, you can watch it, from a linear point of view and so on like that. But advanced TV, I suppose, adds a further angle to it. That interactivity is definitely part of it. From an advertising point of view, what you can do with it. So obviously, can you be quite selective about how you use it from an advertising point of view. But I suppose I define it, really as two ways. There's kind of TV as a viewer is an important thing, because advanced TV to a viewer, it can be, it can encompass everything that ends up on a TV screen, which is fine for the viewer. And however I want to spend my time watching at TV, that's fine. But I suppose you've got to then flip it and look at it from an advertising point of view as well. And that's a very different story, because ultimately for an advertiser, it's had the luxury of, the standards and editorial quality that's kind of associated with TV in the past. That kind of becomes a little bit more grey as to what could be on the TV and what couldn't. So I suppose from that second point of view, an advertising point of view, there still needs to be that kind of angle of, right, okay, yes, it has this new element to it, that kind of interactivity. Yes, I can kind of target around that content as well, but does that content stand up to the quality I'd expect of a TV campaign? Does it have that kind of safety, attention that would be around there as well? But importantly, when it comes to the TV screen, because the TV screen, we know the biggest screen has the most attention, but a brand association with it as well. What content is your ad going to be around? So I think, that's kind of, there's two flip sides to what TV is these days, and I think the advertising point of view from this perspective of us talking now on an advertising podcast is really important to define, because if you don't kind of uphold those standards, then you could have your ad in front of anything just on a TV screen, if you know what I mean.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, completely. That's fair. And in some ways, so we could really summarize that the advanced TV as kind of all video streams delivered via IP to a TV screen, kind of a premium
Absolutely,
video.
yeah. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's a TV screen.
It's a TV.
Advanced TV, connected TV is obviously the other phrase that's often used. It is effectively anything that can be accessed, IP delivered content.
Okay. So talking about Vivo in more specifically, and Vivo is very much I would say a digital first kind of platform, with a large part of your distribution going through YouTube. But you've also kind of recently been expanding and went through other distribution models through broadcasters. Could you could you talk a little more about what you've been doing and talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is about, I've done a lot of historical looking recently about, why Vivo has ended up where it is, and historically how it started, and so on like that. And ultimately, although we're digital first as an industry, music industry was very much a physical industry,
Yeah.
2 decades ago. And it was disrupted massively at the turn of the century. A certain few file sharing platforms came to light. It completely mixed the model up. And therefore, there was a decade's worth of pure disruption, not knowing, chasing tail, and so on like that. Vivo is kind of born out of the tail end of that, and the kind of shift to grasping, or embracing digital change. And therefore, the YouTube being there as a really good opportunity to distribute far and wide, and effectively monetize the music video was an extremely, attractive option. And ultimately, there are no barriers as well.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's often misunderstood about how Vivo work with YouTube as well is that we're effectively a network within YouTube. We're not like a bunch of channels.
Mm.
Every time one of our artists uploads an official music video, then it gets tagged up as part of Vivo and is therefore monetized as part of that. So it's
Right.
effectively a network within YouTube. It's not like a bunch of channels that we
Mhm.
monetize, if you know what I mean. So every video that we have within our network is an official made for TV video. And to that
Okay.
point as well, piracy, which is obviously something that music industry had to deal with a lot of,
Yes.
was to us effectively say, right, this is the official video. This is going to be the highest quality music video, come straight from the label and artist. So
Yep.
you can guarantee this is going to have all the quality that was around it. So that's kind of where that's kind of shifted. And of course, YouTube has started to shift to a TV screen. It feels very
Mm.
circular in terms of the fact that we're coming back to the TV screen. But of course, last couple of years, loads of changes in connectivity in households. The pandemic, obviously, people were grasping for things to watch, and upgrading their internet as a result of that as well. And then you got a scenario there where actually there's loads of opportunity outside of YouTube now, kind of coming to the fore. So the likes of apps that we're now launching within majority of platforms, and there's over 30 platforms globally now that we are on or feature within,
Mm.
and alongside with that, linear channels as well. Being able to curate, exactly, it's a proper full circle, isn't it? TV, music video channels, and being able to elaborate from where that came from in the past. Of course, like MTV back in the day was there was a handful of channels and compilations of lots of different things, but IP delivered content has made things a lot cheaper and a lot easier to curate based on genre, artists, time of year, such as Christmas. So there's loads of opportunities kind of coming out of that, which obviously Vevo is fully embracing.
So are you, in a sense, going into not just on demand, but also kind of a scheduled programming?
Yeah,
Because in some ways that's kind of interesting. See, we've seen the others so schedule into sort of on demand, quite rarely the other side. Um, so how do you see the two complement each other?
So I think there's always a natural way, especially, I mean, if you think about, obviously, radio is still popular, and even kind of playlists and podcasts for in terms of Spotify, for example. So people still want to hear new music, and they want to be told what's going on, and so on like that, and kind of that can then spark more encouragement to then go to more on
Mm.
demand, or equally someone might come to our platform purely because they heard a song recently and they want to see the music video, or one thing that we see a lot of is something from Netflix, for example, a theme tune on Netflix.
Yeah.
There is something will come up like a really popular thing, and then suddenly there's a spike in our inventory purely because something's gone off happening on Netflix. So that kind of synergy between platforms is quite interesting. I suppose that's where you may have seen in the press a TikTok relationship has come from as well,
Right. Okay.
which is ultimately there is a lot of user generated content that's associated with a artist, and now
Hmm.
we are curating trending on TikTok linear channels, for example, to kind of be able to kind of do that. So it's
Wow.
it's kind of um the ubiquitous quality of
It is.
music allows it to
Yeah.
kind of really just flow quite naturally across those channels and be able to kind of curate as well as be on demand and there for the viewer, if you know what I mean.
And they kind of help each other really. It's a
Yeah,
complete, it's a full complementarity, full circle really in some ways.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, fascinating. How do you approach the market from in terms of advertising? How has your sort of ad offering changed over the years? And I would say probably maybe particularly from a CTV point of view.
Yeah, I'd say it's been. I wouldn't say it necessarily changed massively. I'd
Mm.
say it has from the fact that obviously from the off YouTube point of view, we're now talking about pods, and
Yeah.
full ad
Okay.
breaks and so on like
Yeah.
that. But I think at the core, there's still that kind of pre-roll before content,
Hmm.
and that's been a real kind of a kind of staple across that ad offering. Um, and that's why a lot of the time, depending on how YouTube you decide how they want to kind of structure that. In the scenario where we are at the moment, obviously a 20-second is the absolute center of the target, if you know what I mean, because that means it's a pre-roll in that environment, as well as us running a campaign that is encompassing of all of our endpoints. We want to make sure that it's the full ad that's being seen and so on like that. So that's important. But of course, there's been that adaptation to using pods as well, which is obviously going away from that kind of just singular ad before content. We now got to think about
Mm.
how to structure those ad pods and make them as good an experience as it is on that YouTube side as well for those viewers.
Okay. And in terms of I say transaction, how is your sort of inventory transacted? So is it mainly programmatic, or is it a bit of a direct and programmatic combination? And I would say, are there any limitation or data? How do you do in terms of data availability and sort of targeting?
We are a direct business, moving into this territory as well. And I think from the point of view of data as well, um, it's an interesting one because ultimately it's not just a Vevo issue as well. There's not that much standardized data out there. Let's be honest in terms of
Yeah.
this environment, and a lot of the things that we are lucky to have is that we do have with our kind of relationship with YouTube, a lot of login data. We have therefore got demographic data and the ability through digital to start targeting at specific areas as well. We are also investing in ways and means to start splitting our inventory up based on geographical locations and looking at kind of demographic breakdowns and so on like that, which is a bit more of a universal targeting mechanism rather than, oh, I've got this data and this certain ID over here in this scenario, and this publisher's got this data over there. That's obviously not going to talk to each other. But from a buying point of view, if I've got some kind of common denominator that can work across all of these different publishers, we're kind of trying to lean in on that and be, available for that mechanism. So yes, we have first party data, we have viewing data as well, of course, from our platform, so we can understand what kind of genres are being engaged with artists and so on like that, and diversity of content in terms of certain viewers from ethnic backgrounds and all that sort of stuff. Those are something that we are very lucky to have, because our catalogue of content is very diversified in that scenario. So being able to kind of lean into that diversity is really important, and being able to target in some way, shape or form based on that viewing data too is quite a good one.
Okay, so that leads me to talk about something I'm always kind of reluctant to talk about, is measurement.
Yes.
It's the
Aren't we all?
But, exactly. But I think I have to say that when it comes to advanced TV and CTV in particular, it becomes so important. It's almost unavoidable. So I just just quickly to how do you approach measurement?
So we are actually, I mean, we will lean into anybody who wants to measure us. We talk to I think more generalistic as well. We as an industry need to kind of start having a bit more of a common good versus self interest. Because ultimately, I don't think the best scenario for us as an industry is to put all video in one pot and just like kind of measure it and see how far it reached, because ultimately there is a complete scale of quality versus more long tail video, and that's why we are leaning into those kind of more neutral governing bodies and measurement possibilities to see how we can feature, because we're quite confident in our numbers and what we can reach and all that sort of stuff through a TV screen. And we're confident in our content because it's all made for TV. There's not an artist in the world that didn't want to get their music video onto a TV show at some point. So Sea Flight, we're quite happy to kind of talk to Sky. We're Project Origin in terms of what they're doing. And Barb, we speak to them quite a lot as well to see how we could potentially be measured via the router studies and things like that, as well as other opportunities out there. So like sort of Audience Project, Beat Grid, just to try and get that kind of separation out, because obviously we're synonymous with YouTube in some way, shape or form, and we can tell you what our reach is via the data we get back from them, but we do want that kind of independence around that to be able to kind of show how much we're reaching or potentially how much we're reaching outside of traditional campaigns and so on like that, because I think that's really important for us, because we've got a content that attracts an audience that isn't necessarily engaging in more traditional forms of TV and so on like that. So we're a very good complement to what's going on. Let's put it that way. But I think the one thing we do need to do as an industry is kind of define what quality content or TV-like content is, and be able to start working together to do that, because the building blocks are there. I mean, there are TV screens that I don't need to name any name that get a lot of data back from what's going through a TV screen, what ads being played, when, and so on like that, and where. But they've got commercial agreements with those certain apps and content providers on there that will hinder that. But there's no reason why at some point we can go, just use that data purely to tell us what's happened and work together so we can, effectively make life easier for buyers, because at the moment there's a scenario of loads of different silos, which means it's basically an anti-commons. So you've got a scenario where it's not easy to run a campaign. So we've got to make it easier.
Completely. I mean, I think the industry is shifting towards this. It takes a while, but I think we seem to be going in the right path. But I think it's the timing that there's always uncertainty around this.
Absolutely.
Talking about the future, I think it's we're almost pretty much at time. So I just want to it's the beginning of the year, so I think it's good to talk about aspiration and looking ahead. So what do you see as the big opportunities for the year ahead, and from maybe a consumer advertiser standpoint, and where does Vivo fit in?
Yeah, so I mean, Vevo, we're in a good spot, because I mean, you look at any viewer behavior sort of data, something like that, you can see the kind of trends of where that viewing is shifting. Even the kind of from an advertising point of view, the Ubiquity report that was released at the end of last year, I think, kind of saying that there is some reservations about what's going on in the next year ahead and so on like that, but consistently advanced TV, connected TV is kind of top of the list for a bit of extra investment and so on like that. So I think from that point of view, that's a positive, I think, for anyone working in this space at the moment. But ultimately from our point of view, we've got all made for TV content. We've got growing reach through a TV screen, and that's not. I mean, we could say talk about the UK, but likes of Germany, France, 6 million unique monthly viewers, Germany 5 million, Italy 5. UK is at about 12. It's been there for about a year or so, and Spain 5. So that's obviously looking at all of our platforms, but from our point of view, we just look at the content and where's it going to be watched on a TV screen. And it's our audience is really great as well in this scenario, because ultimately it's an audience that's being harder to find, that 16-34 audience. But they are still watching TV. They're just watching it in a very different way than they used to. So we're fairly strong in that position as well. But yeah, from that point of view, I think it's still there's still a lot of opportunity for anyone in this space, not just Vevo, to kind of look at that, complementing campaigns, incremental reach, but also thinking about how does TV move down the funnel as well, and start kind of taking into account, those advertisers that aren't necessarily spending huge amounts on TV, but still want the power of the TV screen to kind of move forward. So lots to look forward to. I think it's as much as there've been a lot of doom and gloom at the end of last year, I think I think there's still quite a lot of positives to have.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing all this, and great to see how sort of Vivo is embracing all those different sort of platforms and apps and channels, and going through a highly coveted audiences as well.
Yes.
Before we say goodbye, I have for tradition to end my podcast with a sort of more personal question. So, and ask my guest to share something that they deeply sort of care about.
Well, I think it's. I mean, it's probably a bit of a cliche. I've got two young kids at the moment, and I think they're pretty much priority number one at the moment. But I think with all the things that are going on in the world, how connected the world has become, and how much you find out information, almost instantly these days, and something that you kind of worry about your kids navigating all this stuff. The things when you were a child, you were like, I wouldn't have had a clue about these things, because I was still out in the garden playing football or something like that. But yeah, I think they're obviously a very big part of where I am. They're 3 and 5 now, so yeah, I've got a lot of hard graft ahead of me. Let's put it that way. But I suppose I mean that's the cliche out of the way there, Manu. But I suppose from an industry point of view as well, I think. I think I'm just kind of passionate about where we are at this point with the TV screen. I think, and I'm worried. I'm worried we're going to screw it up somehow, and not quite appreciate where we are, because I think there's lots of different polar views about what TV is, and what the opportunity is moving forward. And I think we probably lose sight of how far it's come a lot of the time. And I spend a lot of my time trying to bring people back down to earth and say, look, we've gone from targeted broadcast to being able to do this at like district level targeting through a TV screen. It's like, be happy.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, this is great. But it will all come. It will all come. It's just I think it's just trying to kind of educate, keep everyone kind of on the same page, and often try and bring people back to some sort of reality as to where we are and where we come from.
And I hope we help today. As such, that's great. I hope people can hear what you're saying. I'm totally aligned. That's very true. We think we have to realize sometimes where we come from, and there's so much more opportunities ahead of us. So yes, thank you very much, Rich. That's very much appreciated. Thank you for taking part in our first podcast of the year. Love the conversation and the insights you provided.
Thank you.
And then, of course, merci to all our Media Talk listeners for tuning in. And again, best wishes for 2023. It's going to be, and you mentioned that, a rather challenging year, but I think it's an exciting one nonetheless. And I actually went to a conference recently, and I think the word that was mentioned was cautious optimism. So with this, best wishes, and until next time, goodbye.
Media Talks, the podcast that helps to better understand the world of media and video advertising.